One star survived a Mafia throat slashing, then kept performing in mob-run clubs. Another turned down iconic movie roles because the mob told him to. These weren't just coincidences or rumors. They were real, dangerous ties that reached from the silver screen to smoky back rooms. In old Hollywood, fame came with a price, and sometimes that price was paid in loyalty, silence, or blood. From A-list actors to legendary crooners, some of the biggest names in entertainment didn't just rub shoulders with the Mafia. They took orders from them. This is the story of 20 stars whose careers, lives, and legacies were forever shaped by organized crime. 1. George Raft. George Raft wasn't just an actor. He was the bridge between Tinseltown and the underworld. Born in Hell's Kitchen, New York, Raft grew up surrounded by gangsters. Before he ever stepped in front of a camera, he was a dancer in mob-run clubs and an errand boy for mobster Owney Madden. His coin-flipping, tough guy persona in 1932's Scarface wasn't an act. It was his real life with a layer of celluloid. Raft's friends weren't just famous, they were infamous. He regularly dined and partied with Bugsy Siegel and Meyer Lansky, not as a frightened actor trying to curry favor, but as an equal, a trusted associate. When Raft moved to Hollywood, his loyalty to his underworld friends didn't stop. He allegedly used his studio influence to help known gangsters gain film work or avoid scrutiny, shielding them from law enforcement. In one instance, Raft reportedly intervened to stop a Mafia hit on actor Gary Cooper after a minor offense had put Cooper in bad graces. While these rumors were never confirmed, they only added to Raft's dangerous mystique. He even turned down roles in High Sierra and The Maltese Falcon, which would go on to launch Humphrey Bogart to superstardom, possibly at the suggestion of his underworld friends. To many in Hollywood, Raft was a liability, but to the Mafia, he was their man on the inside. His friendships were so entwined with the mob that the British government once denied him entry into the UK, citing national security concerns. Raft wasn't just a friend of the Mafia, he was practically one of them. 2. Frank Sinatra. Frank Sinatra's voice could melt hearts, but his friendships could raise eyebrows. While the FBI kept files on his every move, it was no secret that Sinatra was personally close with several major mob figures. He dined with Sam Giancana, partied with Lucky Luciano, and even vacationed with Willie Moretti, a notorious Jersey mobster rumored to have helped launch his career. Sinatra wasn't just a celebrity brushing shoulders with gangsters, he was their friend. He once allegedly arranged a private meeting between JFK and Giancana, blending politics and organized crime in a way only old Blue Eyes could manage. He performed at Mafia weddings, shared drinks in backroom clubs, and allegedly used mob connections to pressure venues into booking his shows. Though Sinatra always denied wrongdoing, claiming he simply couldn't avoid mobsters in his line of work, his loyalty went beyond coincidence. He reportedly refused to testify against Giancana when subpoenaed, and even confronted journalists who dared to print Mafia allegations. His famous role in The Godfather, thinly veiled as Johnny Fontaine, was a Hollywood mirror reflecting real-life whispers. 3. Dean Martin. Dean Martin, the suave half of the Rat Pack, exuded cool on stage and off. But behind that easy grin was a man with deep underworld ties. Raised in Steubenville, Ohio, a town long controlled by the Mafia, Martin was surrounded by mob influence from an early age. His friendships followed him to Hollywood, where he became close with mobsters like Johnny Rosselli and Frank Costello. Martin's Vegas performances were often backed by mob-owned casinos, and he frequently entertained their associates in VIP lounges. But unlike Sinatra, Martin kept things quiet. He wasn't flashy about his connections, He was trusted because he never talked. Mob insiders described him as a stand-up guy who never asked questions and never betrayed a friend. Even his comedic roles had an edge of truth. In Ocean's 11, he played a slick, risk-taking schemer, eerily similar to the men he called friends. Dean Martin didn't need to play the mob's game. He already belonged. Judy Garland. Judy Garland, the golden-voiced star of The Wizard of Oz, had a lesser-known chapter in her life, one where the Mafia quietly watched over her. By the late 1940s, Garland's drug use and erratic behavior had made her vulnerable. Enter Johnny Roselli, a high-ranking member of the Chicago outfit, who stepped in not just as a fan, but as a protector. Roselli reportedly arranged bodyguards and even threatened a studio executive who had been exploiting Garland financially. Mob insiders have claimed that Roselli had a deep affection for her. Platonically or romantically remains unclear. What's certain is that Garland's troubles drew the sympathy of some dangerous friends. She never openly acknowledged these connections, but those close to her noticed how her troubles seemed to vanish when the right people were around. Garland's fragility made her a target, but to the mob, she was someone to shield, a star they loved too much to lose. 5. Sammy Davis Jr. Sammy Davis Jr., with his dazzling stage presence and boundary-breaking performances, was a trailblazer, but also a marked man. As a black Jewish entertainer involved with white women in a racially divided America, he faced violent threats, including from the Ku Klux Klan. But the Mafia saw him differently. Frank Sinatra introduced Davis to Mafia friends in Las Vegas, who offered him protection. When hotel owners refused to let him stay where he performed, mob figures convinced management to change their minds. Davis later credited these connections for helping desegregate Vegas lounges. Though Davis walked a tightrope, never fully embraced by the mainstream or the underworld, he appreciated the Mafia's help when few others would stand beside him. He might have been an outsider to Hollywood, but in the mob's circle, he was family. 6. Tony Bennett. Tony Bennett's velvety voice made him a legend of American song, but his career had a shadowy side many fans never knew. Like many performers during the mid-20th century, Bennett performed in clubs that were either owned or financed by organized crime. But for Bennett, it went beyond the stage. He formed genuine friendships with mob figures like Anthony Spilotro, the infamous enforcer of the Chicago outfit. The friendship turned personal in the late 1970s when Bennett began a relationship with a woman reportedly linked to Spilotro. When Spilotro found out, he confronted Bennett and, according to insiders, physically assaulted the singer, allegedly using a phone book to avoid leaving visible bruises. The message was clear: stay away. Rather than retaliate, Bennett took the incident as a wake-up call. Deep in personal turmoil already, with substance issues weighing on him, the encounter pushed him to seek help and rehab. He credited that period as the turning point that saved both his health and his career. Interestingly, despite the violence, Bennett never went public with harsh words against Spilotro or the Mafia. Many interpreted this silence as a quiet nod to the old rules of respect. He wasn't just a passing performer in the mob's orbit. He was part of a strange, symbiotic friendship where protection, power, and performance intersected. Tony Bennett's voice might have filled concert halls, but offstage, he was navigating dangerous relationships that hit notes far darker than any ballad he ever sang. 7. Marilyn Monroe. Marilyn Monroe was the very picture of Hollywood glamour, but few knew her life was deeply entangled with the criminal underworld. Beyond her affairs with the Kennedy brothers, Monroe's associations with mob boss Sam Giancana drew intense scrutiny, especially in the days leading up to her mysterious death. Gianni Russo, an actor with mob ties, later claimed that Monroe had been used by Giancana and other mafia leaders to gain leverage over powerful political figures, particularly President John F. Kennedy. According to Russo, Monroe had been recording her private conversations with the Kennedy brothers, tapes the mob hoped to use for blackmail. But Monroe, emotionally unraveling and reportedly ready to go public, became a liability. Days before her death, she allegedly met with Giancana in Chicago, and soon after, she was found dead from a barbiturate overdose. Officially ruled a probable suicide, her death has long been surrounded by rumors of a mafia-ordered silencing. Despite the danger she was in, Monroe never publicly distanced herself from her mafia-linked friends. She seemed drawn to power, even if it was dangerous. Her warmth, vulnerability, and desire to be loved made her easy prey in a world where charm and brutality walked hand in hand. Behind her dazzling smile and iconic beauty was a woman caught in a deadly web of affection, secrets, and whispered threats. Monroe's friends in the Mafia may have adored her, but in the end, some believe they ensured her silence. 8. Jerry Orbach. Before becoming beloved as Detective Lenny Briscoe on Law and Order, Jerry Orbach had a brush with the mob that was no scripted drama. In the early 1970s, Orbach starred in The Gang That Couldn't Shoot Straight, a satirical film loosely based on real-life mobster Joey Gallo of the Profazzi crime family. But the film's subject was no fan of being made into a joke. Instead of expressing anger, Gallo approached Orbach with unexpected warmth. The two struck up a friendship that would prove both peculiar and perilous. Orbach, ever the gentleman actor, found himself spending evenings with Gallo, dining at hot spots in Little Italy, and attending comedy shows together. The friendship took a tragic turn on April 7, 1972. That night, Gallo was assassinated in a hail of bullets at Umberto's Clam House. Orbach and his wife had been with Gallo earlier that evening, possibly even at the restaurant, according to some accounts. When questioned by authorities, Orbach refused to talk. He didn't name names. He didn't speculate. He remained loyal to his fallen friend, even as the media swirled with rumors. To this day, some believe Orbach knew more than he let on. But if so, he took that knowledge to his grave. His loyalty, once admired in his characters, may have mirrored real life more than fans ever imagined. Jerry Orbach didn't just act in crime stories, he lived one. 9. Bing Crosby. Bing Crosby, the wholesome voice behind White Christmas, might seem like the last person you'd associate with the Mafia. But behind the cardigan sweaters and fatherly charm lay a man with a serious gambling problem, and dangerous friends who enabled it. Crosby was a regular at illegal gambling dens across Los Angeles and Las Vegas, many of which were run by mob outfits. His addiction led him into deep debt, so deep that he reportedly owed over $100,000 to notorious figures in the Chicago outfit. To avoid ruin, or worse, he turned to his close friend Frank Sinatra, who had deeper mafia connections, for help settling the score. In 1929, one of Crosby's darkest brushes with the underworld came when he passed out drunk in a mob-owned club. Moments after he stumbled into the bathroom, the lounge was sprayed with machine gun fire by a rival gang. Crosby narrowly escaped death, not through skill, but sheer luck. The FBI even opened a file on Crosby due to his mob associations and mounting gambling debts. While he was never charged with a crime, the investigation revealed just how close the family-friendly crooner had come to disaster. Crosby's charm and clean image masked a reckless streak. The Mafia didn't just tolerate him, they enabled and protected him. And in return, Bing kept quiet, kept singing, and kept placing bets with men who didn't tolerate losers. 10. Lana Turner. Lana Turner, one of MGM's brightest stars, had a beauty that captivated millions, and one mobster in particular. Her relationship with Johnny Stompanato, the right-hand man of Los Angeles mob boss Mickey Cohen, would become one of Hollywood's most infamous romances. Stompanato wasn't just a jealous lover. He was dangerous. He reportedly used mob muscle to keep Turner under control, threatening her with violence if she attempted to leave him. He often showed up uninvited on her film sets, flaunting his mafia connections and intimidating studio executives. In private, their relationship was volatile. Turner endured a string of abuses, and in April 1958, everything came to a breaking point. After a heated argument turned violent in their Beverly Hills home, Turner's teenage daughter Cheryl Crane stabbed Stompanato with a kitchen knife, killing him. Though the death was ruled justifiable homicide, scandal engulfed Turner. Whispers of mob retaliation circulated. Some believed Cheryl took the fall for her mother. Others speculated Turner knew more about the underworld than she let on. Despite this, Turner's career miraculously endured. Her performances afterward, particularly in Imitation of Life, gained her sympathy and acclaim. But behind the comeback was a woman who had walked a razor-thin line between Hollywood's dream machine and the Mafia's violent reality. Lana Turner didn't just love a gangster, she survived one. 11. Peter Lawford. Peter Lawford, the charming British actor and member of the Rat Pack, seemed born for stardom. He was suave, politically connected, and, through his marriage to Patricia Kennedy, part of American royalty. But behind the polished image was a man who often found himself entangled between the Kennedy family and the Mafia. Lawford's association with the mob began through his friendships with Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin, both of whom had direct lines to figures like Sam Giancana and Johnny Roselli. Lawford served as a go-between, allegedly helping arrange secret meetings between John F. Kennedy and Mafia-connected entertainers. One of the most controversial episodes came when Lawford invited Sinatra to build a special helipad at his Palm Springs estate in anticipation of a visit from JFK. When Attorney General Robert Kennedy, wary of Sinatra's Mafia ties, canceled the trip, Sinatra was humiliated. Lawford bore the brunt of his rage and was subsequently exiled from the Rat Pack. While Lawford's ties to the mob weren't as direct as his peers, his friendships placed him squarely in the crosshairs of political scandal and criminal suspicion. His once brilliant career began to dim, and he slipped into years of alcoholism and obscurity. In the end, Lawford was a man torn between two worlds, the spotlight of political legacy and the shadows of organized crime. He tried to please both and lost favor with both. 12. Tony Curtis. Tony Curtis, star of Some Like It, Hot and the Defiant Ones, was known for his wit, looks, and undeniable charisma. But behind that charm was a man with surprising friendships, some that came straight from the underworld. Curtis grew up in the Bronx, where his early years were shaped by poverty, street smarts, and an awareness of who really held power in the neighborhood. He never forgot the men who ruled the streets, and when he made it big in Hollywood, he found comfort among the familiar, mobsters who had once seemed larger than life. He was particularly close with gangster Mickey Cohen, Los Angeles' most powerful mob figure during the 1950s. Curtis frequented Cohen's clubs and was a regular at his high-stakes poker nights. Unlike other stars who pretended not to know their criminal associates, Curtis embraced the relationship, so long as it didn't interfere with his work. He once defended Cohen in the press, calling him a misunderstood businessman, which only fueled the rumors. When asked about his mafia friendships later in life, Curtis would shrug them off as part of the business. Curtis's charm won him admiration on both sides of the law. To Hollywood, he was a heartthrob. To the mob, he was an honorary member of the family. And to the public, just a man who made crime look stylish, on and off screen. 13. Mickey Rooney. Mickey Rooney's career spanned nearly 9 decades, but it was his off-screen antics that often made headlines. Known for his gambling, volatile relationships, and endless energy, Rooney attracted all kinds of attention, including from the Mafia. As a top box office draw in the 1940s, Rooney earned millions, and he spent it just as fast, often at mob-controlled casinos in Las Vegas and illegal gambling dens in Los Angeles. His mounting debts became a problem, not just for him, but for the studios that relied on his star power. Enter his friends. Mob enforcers reportedly stepped in to help collect debts from those who owed Rooney, and at times protected him from creditors looking to collect on his massive losses. According to several Hollywood insiders, Rooney had a habit of hanging around with tough guys, often bragging about his friends who could make problems disappear. He even performed at Mafia-run venues long after his star had faded, some say out of loyalty, others out of necessity. But through it all, Rooney remained grateful. "They treated me better than the studios ever did," he once joked. Though his friendships with mob figures never landed him in legal trouble, they added a wild edge to a career already full of controversy. Mickey Rooney was unpredictable, charismatic, and at times dangerously connected. 14. Joe E. Louis. Joe E. Louis was a sharp-tongued nightclub comic with a big voice and an even bigger mouth. In the 1920s, he got his big break performing at the Green Mill, a Chicago club owned by mob boss Jack Machine Gun McGurn, a key lieutenant to Al Capone. But when Louis decided to leave the Green Mill to perform elsewhere, McGurn didn't take kindly to it. In 1927, 3 men broke into Louis's hotel room. They slit his throat, nearly severed his tongue, and left him for dead. The message was clear: don't cross the mob. Remarkably, Louis survived. He underwent multiple surgeries, slowly regained his voice, and returned to the stage, this time with a dark edge and biting humor. Oddly enough, after the attack, Louis didn't retreat from mob circles. He remained friendly with McGurn, and even made jokes about the incident in his act. Frank Sinatra was so taken by his story that he portrayed Louis in the 1957 biopic, The Joker is Wild. The film showcased the strange friendship that could exist between a victim and his attackers, a bizarre but very real arrangement in mob-entwined showbiz. Louis never pressed charges, never named names, and never stopped performing in mob-controlled venues. His silence earned him their respect, and a strange sort of protection. For Joe E. Louis, comedy and crime were always sharing the same spotlight. 15th. Vic Deone. Vic Deone had the voice of an angel and the company of devils. Known for hits like You're Breaking My Heart, Deone rose to fame in the 1950s alongside crooners like Sinatra and Bennett. But like many of his peers, he had quiet friendships with some of America's most feared gangsters. His most notorious connection? Mob boss Frank Costello, one of the most influential figures in the New York underworld. Deone wasn't just an acquaintance. He was reportedly close enough to Costello to seek protection when he found himself in trouble. In the 1970s, Deone was facing serious threats from a man connected to another crime family. According to FBI reports, he reached out to Costello, who in turn arranged a sit-down to settle the issue. The threats disappeared. Later in life, Deone admitted that his friendships with mobsters weren't unusual, especially for Italian-American entertainers of the era. "It was part of the business," he said in a candid interview. "You didn't ask too many questions. You just knew who to respect." He never glorified his connections, but neither did he deny them. Deone kept singing, kept smiling, and kept his friends close. Some a little too close. In the smoky lounges of Las Vegas and the cabarets of New York, Deone's voice won hearts. But in the back rooms and private booths, it was his friendships that kept him safe. 16. Jimmy Durante. Jimmy Durante, with his gravelly voice and signature ha-cha-cha, was beloved for his humor and charm. But behind the clownish persona was a man who maintained deep and loyal friendships with figures in the New Jersey and New York mob scene. Durante grew up in the Lower East Side of Manhattan, surrounded by tough guys who would later run rackets across the East Coast. As his fame grew, he never forgot his roots, and neither did the mob. They supported his career from the shadows, attending shows, securing bookings, and ensuring he had top billing in mob-owned nightclubs. He frequently performed at the Copacabana and the Latin Quarter, both with well-known Mafia ties, and when Durante's brother found himself entangled in gambling debts, the right people stepped in to make the problem disappear. What made Durante unique was that he never pretended to be anything other than what he was, a street kid who made it big. He kept his old friends close, cracking jokes with them over pasta dinners and club booths. Though he never faced legal trouble or scandal, insiders knew that Jimmy Durante wasn't just joking when he said, "I've got friends in low places." He did, and they loved him for it. 17th, Elizabeth Taylor. Elizabeth Taylor, the queen of Hollywood glamour, had a life marked by drama, romance, and opulence. But buried within her glittering legacy were a few shadowy connections that tied her to the Mafia, connections few fans ever knew about. Taylor was married 8 times, and during her brief marriage to singer Eddie Fisher, she was introduced to several high-powered mobsters who were connected to Fisher's nightclub appearances in Las Vegas. Most notably, she crossed paths with Sam Giancana and Johnny Roselli, men who had influence over venues, entertainers, and who got booked, or banned. These weren't just brief introductions. According to several insiders, Taylor dined privately with mob figures at exclusive Vegas restaurants and received diamond gifts from admirers whose names were never disclosed. Some of her bodyguards during the 1960s were even rumored to be assigned by mob-connected friends who felt she needed extra protection. Taylor never commented publicly on these ties, and perhaps it was because she didn't see the danger, only the charm. Her extravagant lifestyle attracted all types, and in the cocktail swirl of Hollywood and Vegas, she stood toe-to-toe with dangerous men like she belonged there. In the end, it's unclear whether Taylor was simply an icon, courted by criminals, or a woman who chose to keep powerful friends close, for glamour, safety, or just curiosity. 18. Telly Savalas. Telly Savalas, best known as the lollipop-loving detective Kojak, was a larger-than-life figure in the entertainment world. With his deep voice and bald head, he exuded authority, both on-screen and off. And off-screen, his authority came partly from his friendships with some of the most feared men in Las Vegas. Savalas was a fixture in Vegas nightclubs during the 1970s, often seen in the company of high-ranking figures in the Chicago outfit who ran casinos behind the scenes. He wasn't just a celebrity guest, he was treated like royalty. Mob-connected casino owners arranged VIP tables, security escorts, and even private jet access for the actor. Insiders claim Savalas earned this treatment by being a reliable ally. He never snitched, never judged, and never took sides in mob feuds. He also brought in business. When he headlined shows, mob-backed casinos made a killing, and they repaid him with loyalty. His character Kojak may have hunted criminals, but the real Savalas kept their company. And they loved him for his honesty, his style, and his refusal to play politics. He once quipped, "Everyone needs someone who's got your back." In Vegas, the men who had Savalas's back didn't wear badges. They wore brass knuckles. 19. Dick Haymes. Dick Haymes was once hailed as one of the finest vocalists of the 1940s, rivaling even Frank Sinatra. But while his voice soared, his finances crumbled, and it was the mob that came to his rescue. Plagued by tax troubles, gambling debts, and a messy divorce, Haymes was in deep by the late 1950s. That's when he turned to a group of Vegas investors, men with deep pockets and deeper ties to the Mafia. In exchange for bailing him out, Haymes agreed to exclusive performance contracts at mob-owned venues, including the Sands and the Tropicana. But these weren't just business deals, they were obligations. Haymes was expected to perform, socialize with powerful figures, and, according to rumors, run occasional errands during his downtime. He never refused. Though he never faced prosecution, the arrangement haunted him. Friends said he lived with a constant edge of anxiety, never knowing when the mob would come calling again. Haynes's career slowly declined, and he faded from the spotlight. But he never forgot the men who saved him, nor did he cross them. It's one of the reasons he survived where others didn't. 20th. Lenny Montana. Lenny Montana's claim to fame was his chilling portrayal of Luca Brasi in The Godfather. But what made that performance so unforgettable wasn't acting. It was real experience. Before Montana ever stepped onto a movie set, he was an actual enforcer for the Colombo crime family. He worked as a bodyguard, collector, and sometimes muscle at mob-run clubs. His imposing figure, 6 feet 6 inches and over 300 pounds, made him ideal for the job. When The Godfather was casting, Francis Ford Coppola needed someone who could convincingly intimidate without speaking a word. Enter Lenny Montana. He wasn't discovered by a casting agent. He was noticed while guarding a real mob meeting near the set. Montana's nervous rehearsal scene, where he stumbles over birthday wishes to Don Corleone, wasn't scripted. It was his genuine nervousness acting opposite Marlon Brando. Coppola loved it and kept it. Though Montana became a beloved part of film history, he never stopped associating with the men who gave him his first job. He remained a loyal friend to the Colombo family, occasionally showing up at events with known mob figures well into the 1980s. Lenny Montana didn't play a gangster. He was one who just happened to become a movie star. From Oscar winners to nightclub crooners, these 20 stars show that old Hollywood wasn't just about talent and charm. It was about connections, protection, and dangerous friendships. Which story shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more Hollywood secrets.